How's that for a funky, how's that for a funky view? And, there's a big story behind this old grizzly bear too. And for a side note on this bear right here, I showed a skull to a veterinarian buddy of mine, doctor. Oh, he owns a veterinarian clinic. He owned one in Pemberton and Cache Creek. And he showed me where the skull was rotting. It started to rot. His tooth decay went right up into his skull. And the skull was starting to rot away. And he said that that was the beginning of the bear's demise. That was going to kill him. He's on his way out. That was pretty interesting. I'll show you a skull later on. I basically got a skull for, I've got a cleaned out skull from numerous crazy species in North America. They're tucked away in a box right now, but once I get that thing finished behind me, I'm gonna show you guys a whole pile of interesting stuff that I've come across during my years of living an adventure life in the mountains in North America. But anyway, I don't think I've ever had a beer with you guys ever before. In this time. It's kind of funny, people are finding it, probably like, oh my God, you drink Corona? I actually don't really drink that much, but I grabbed one of these. We're doing it's a heat wave right now. Horses are having a tough time. Excuse me. There is no mosquitoes here. There's a couple mosquitoes, but in turn they got the flies. The flies are insane. Got out there this morning, let them across the pasture side of the road, and they started galloping, running back and forth. And I thought they were having fun at first, and I realized they were irritated to the max, and I went over and caught them up, and they just had frickin' flies ringing around their eyeballs all over their face. It was going insane. So I got the fly masks on them right away, and then bug dope around their muzzles, and they put them back where they're just now for an hour, and they're content. And I grabbed a cold beer because I've been busy behind me here. Finally got the first floor deck done. The framing part done today, and as well I did a lot of work in the basement of the house, framing up 2 bedrooms, and haven't stopped. And I'm having a cold frickin' beer now. And that is cold. Oh, freezing cold and good. And I'm going to share a bunch of emails. And I still haven't cracked open the email inbox for about a week for the new ones, because I don't want to, I feel it just sucks that there's a lot of people missing out right now still, and they've been patiently waiting, I hope, to get their what they want shared with all of you, the people, shared. So let's have a look. I'm slowly getting through them, and there's a lot more. I had a whole bunch just lined up right here a minute ago. What the hell? All right, here we go. 6 cents, Yellowstone, Wyoming. I'm sending you this email from my phone because my computer is down. I'm also using my voice to text, so please excuse any grammatical errors. I've been following you on YouTube for several months now. Not even sure how I came upon your channel. First year I heard you read it with about a hunting incident where the guy took off and ran the rifle at you and told you to shoot the bear in the head. Oh yeah, that was my childhood best friend. He's passed away now. He threw the gun in the air and the bear charged us running. It's kind of a shitty moment. I literally was rolling in stitches. Oh, absolutely hilarious. I guess it probably sounded hilarious, but it definitely wasn't funny at the time, I'll tell you what. Then for the next few videos I watched where you were showing evidence, but you were never really mentioning what it was that you were talking about, just the fact that we knew. And as soon as you said that, I knew exactly what you were referring to. I'm not sure what you're talking about there, but my story began about 14 years ago while I was out deer hunting in the South Fork of the Shoshone River, just outside Yellowstone, NP. I had not gotten anything that day, and previously, but just before sun went down, my buddy flushed out by a huge buck, entirely by accident. As he was walking back to the truck, he shot it and saw it right off, but he knew he'd gotten a good solid hit on it. So we came and got me, and we went over to where he shot it, found obvious signs of blood everywhere. So we stayed there a few minutes, smoked a couple cigarettes to hopefully let the deer bed down, or stop and lay down and bleed out, which we did. And after securing permission from the landowner, we were able to cross onto his property, and 25 yards inside his property we found his deer. While we field dressed it, I went back and brought the pickup closer so we could drag the deer back to the truck, which we did. Just before we were getting ready to leave, I realized that I left my gloves on the ground back where we dressed the deer out. So I told my buddy, hang on for a minute, and I was gonna go run back and grab them. It was about 50 yards away from where the truck was parked. I hurried down there, and as I picked up those gloves, I stood up and literally had every hair on my body stand up. It was almost like static electricity kind of feeling. And I've always had that kind of sixth sense thing that I've heard you talk about. I spent nearly 20 years working as a paramedic in both the rural and urban settings. You can develop the awareness, especially when you go into situations that aren't exactly under control. Anyway, with this weird feeling that came over me, I just knew I was being watched. I slowly turned and scanned everything around me to see if maybe I was just picking up the feeling that there was a bear. After what I would say about a minute or 2 minutes, I realized if something was out there, I couldn't see it, but something in my head was telling me that I was in danger. I truly thought there was a bear. And we're in grizzly country here, was closing in on that gut pile. And of course, I was completely unarmed at that point, other than my small knife, because I'd left my rifle and handgun back at the truck. So at this point, I did another quick scan, didn't see anything, didn't hear anything, which is kind of strange. It's just really, really quiet. Anyway, I started moving back towards the truck, and it quickly and be as quickly and obvious as I could be. All right, man, there's some spelling mistakes. Bear with me, you guys. I was trying to talk and make noise, but I was struggling to say anything out of fear, I guess, because I thought if it was a bear, if I made noise, then he would be aware of me and would know that I'm leaving that gut pile for him. I got near to the truck and I started relaxing. I didn't have that hair standing up in the back of my neck feeling. Oh, but I was still feeling really uneasy. And the thought in my head was, leave and get out of here. When I got back to the truck, my buddy looked at me, asked what was wrong, because I guess it was written all over my face that I was upset. I told him that I had a weird feeling. I thought maybe there might be a bear in the vicinity because we had seen lots of sign that day. He kind of looked at me strangely and then said, what did the landowner have to say? I looked at him puzzled because I had no idea what he's talking about. We had talked to the landowner after shooting the deer to secure permission to cross into his woodlot, but that was at his house out close to the highway. So I asked him, what are you talking about? And then he said that he saw what he thought was the landowner coming from where his house would be through the woods to where I was at. And he saw him kind of disappear back farther into the woods where I should have been. I was completely confused at that point because I hadn't seen anybody. I hadn't heard anybody. And there was enough leaves and such on the ground that it would be difficult for someone to walk quietly. I just kind of shook it off at that point, thinking I let my imagination get the best of me, and it was probably what I was sensing was the owner coming through the woods to check on us. Anyway, as we proceeded to leave, we had to stop back at the landowner's house to give him the portion of the state tag so he could get reimbursed. My buddy went up to the door to leave his tag, and the owner greeted him at the door. I got out of the truck at that point, walked up there, and they were already in conversation, and I realized it wasn't the landowner that my friend saw going through the woods. So we got a short discussion with the landowner and told him what had happened, and that I had a feeling in and everything. He just kind of looked at me and chuckled a bit and said, oh, I see you met my friend. I asked him, who was that? Oh, and he said, no, not a friend, but a friend that he sees in the woods every once in a while. At that point, my buddy and I realized what he was talking about. Later that night, I was at my buddy's house before heading back home. Now, when we were talking about this encounter, and his wife was the first one to bring it up and say it out loud, the word Bigfoot. And for some reason, when she actually said it out loud, I just felt this overwhelming terror. Shortly thereafter, I left, I went home, and a few days later, I went to go hunting again in the same area. When I got down there, I was about 3 miles from where my buddy got his deer. As I parked and started walking in the woods where the base of the mountain was, I just had this overwhelming feeling like I did the previous time. And something was telling me, don't go by yourself. I did listen to that sixth sense and got right back in my truck, went home, and never talked about it again. My buddy's wife would bring it up every once in a while, but I would always just change the subject, leave the room or whatever. Now, I'll be honest with you, I haven't set better foot back in the woods hunting since that day. Excuse me. The only reason I finally decided to write you was that because of an incident that happened the other night. I was up in Billings, Montana, and left there about 11 p.m. to drive back to Cody where I live. And I have some missing time that night, but that's a whole nother story. Again, thank you for sharing this and listening. Makes me feel a little better that I'm not the only one. And maybe after getting this off my chest, I can finally get back into the mountains around here. John in Cody, Wyoming. Well, all right, John. Well, you know what my stance is when I hear that when people inform me that they've quit. Quitting sucks. I don't like it when people quit. I hate quitters. I hate quitting. I don't quit nothing. And I think, I don't know, it's up to you, man. If your stomach, your sixth sense is telling you not to go back in the woods, go hunting, don't go. All right, follow your intuition. It's never wrong. It's probably telling you the right thing to do, right? I mean, I would encourage you to go back anyway, but I do not encourage people to go against their intuition, their sixth sense, because I believe if you do, you're gonna pay a heavy price. As an example of that, do you guys remember that movie, The Grizzly Man or whatever, that guy, that ex-heroin addict from Los Angeles, California? Treadway, what was his name? Something Treadwell. The guy that went up to Alaska and ran around in the park with all the brown bears and spoke to them like they were his neighbors and his kids and relatives. And I'll admit, I watched that show, that documentary about him and his girlfriend after they were killed. And after watching that guy, the way he conducted himself with the wildlife, before the even movie got over with, I was actually saying out loud, oh my God, hurry up and kill this guy already, right? He was doing some very, very stupid things. But getting back to the sixth sense part about it, his girlfriend did not want to be there. She was terrified being there. She didn't want to be there, and he made her go anyway. And she relented, and she went, and she paid the ultimate price, and she died by bear attack. And that's what she was fearing the most. She went against her intuition. She went against her sixth sense, and she paid the ultimate price, and she lost her life to a brown bear in the middle of the night in the tent. Very, very unfortunate. When I heard about her stance on going there and going against her intuition, her sixth sense, and him pushing her to go, it made me real mad. I was like, you filthy, dirty, selfish bastard. It's okay, it's up to you. You want to go up in the woods, hang out with grizzly bears, pretend that you're your neighbors and your friends, go ahead. But if you force somebody to go and accompany you after they have expressed that they are terrified, shame on you, man. That's not good. But anyway, enough of me babbling. Let's get on with it. Here's another one titled March 27, 1964, Good Friday, 5:30 p.m., place, town of Valdez, Alaska. Whenever I hear Alaska, see Alaska, the title really perks my interest. It really gets me listening, gets my attention. Hey Steve, this is my story. My family moved to Fairbanks, Alaska in 1962 to be close to my grandparents. Granddad was a bush pilot, and my father had just gotten his aeronautical engineering degree to be his mechanic on his Piper Cub airplane. I was 7, and like most little boys from the lower 48, was obsessed with snow and how much there was of it. I was in heaven. Now, if you have not experienced the old Alaskan winters before global warming, then just imagine snowfalls that covered a 2-bedroom log cabin with enough snow to completely make it unrecognizable, except as a big snowbank. I've witnessed that. We had to dig down into an A-frame cabin once north of Anchorage. Just a giant white pile of sparkling fun. I would have lived on that snowbank forever. But that day was just another day, and I was going with my grandpa for his normal fly-ins of fuel and a couple of skiers to one of the many mountains. I was playing on a snowbank with the neighbor's St. Bernard puppy when Dad and Grandpa emerged from the tunnel that led into the changing room and then inside the cabin. I tried hiding from them, but my snowsuit made of seal, deer, and Arctic hare would allow me to move in. My new outfit, all completely made by an old Inuit lady, a friend of Grandpa's, right down to the mucklucks. They are like moccasins for winter. That having no tread on the bottom and a puppy twice my size using you as a sled could. It was time for us to get in the air. As Grandpa did every Friday afternoon, he carried the 2 bags under his arms and stopped to put them in the giant white pickup truck, waiting with Dad at the wheel, one of the apples and one of the oranges. And as normal, I asked, as I did every time I saw this third sight, he would answer with, They're for the polar bears, which was where I would lose interest and the subject was lost in the sea of questions little boys are full of. All went as normal till the last items for delivery were the apples and oranges. Today was the day Grandpa was letting me throw them out the hatch in the belly of the plane. I watched as they fell away to the ground. Poof! Landing next to the old river dredge, long since left sitting in the river that was no longer having water, just piles of rocks and dirt scattered around it. It was a huge boat with an arm sticking out of the front, lined with big buckets and chairs, like teeth on a chainsaw. Now all finished with the day's deliveries, Grandpa wanted to stop by one of his friends to get the bear hide he tanned for him. We landed outside the town of Valdez, or Valdez, whatever it is, and walked the 100 or so yards to the cabin and went inside. Of course, I asked to ride his ugly skidoo while waiting for the grown-ups to finish yakking. As we said our goodbyes, everything seemed to change, as if we had dropped onto another world in a blink of an eye. The silence was so shocking you could feel it. The sunny skies were a grayish blue, then a cloud passed in front of the sun. But this cloud just stopped, frozen, like everything around us. I didn't notice till the grown-ups froze as well and stood looking around with worried looks. Grandpa looked down at his watch and said, "Shit, it's 5:30 and we're late." We turned towards the spot we left the plane, and that was when we heard a far-off like moan or soft growl that was getting loud fast. All of a sudden, Grandpa dropped his bear hide and grabbed me by the shoulder, half dragging me, half throwing me ahead of him. Then I too felt it. Softly, but with growing force, it crawled up your body like a snake, higher and higher, and then with the power I've not felt ever again in my life, everything started to buck, shake, and vibrate like Mom's washer. When I tried to wash the bearskin rug to hide the spill of pudding I wasn't to eat until after dinner the month before, the shaking had made us all fall to the ground. Gramps yelled, "Go back to Charles' cabin. I'll be right behind you." I tried but didn't get far, scared. I turned around to look at Gramps and he was gone. Then the ground itself started to roll like waves at the beach. Trees crashed down everywhere, and the sound was beyond deafening, and it sounded like it was after me. By now, all semblance of normality was lost. I screamed, but no sound could I hear, just the roar of it coming from everywhere and nowhere. Something hit me in the forehead hard. Looking up, I saw trees that wanted to crush me. I tried to get up and run, but all I could manage was a crawl. By this time, the blood was streaming down my face and into my eye. I was blinded. Then all of a sudden, I was flying. And I do mean flying, only feet off the ground but moving fast. Something had grabbed me by the back of my snowsuit and it had me so tight it was hard to breathe. I tried to look behind but wasn't able to turn enough to see what it could be. Then I looked down and behind me, just as whatever it was, its foot and leg hit with a thump in rapid succession. Nothing moved this fast, at least that I knew of. Still in Superman mode, I watched the whole world turn to liquid waves that rolled the road's surface, which a minute earlier was as hard as rock, now moved as if it was the ocean. Whoever was holding me changed his grip, and that's when I saw his arm come around my chest. But it was different somehow. After what seemed like a minute, I grabbed at what I thought was the person's wrist. It wasn't a wrist, it was a finger. It had a fingernail. I can't remember if it was then on earlier, but somehow in the 2 minutes, maybe less, I pissed myself. Then all went black. I must have overloaded and passed out. What seemed like days turned out to be 4.5 minutes. Everything stopped. I could hear a num, 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 softly coming from something behind me in the mess of downed trees. I knew that sound, but what or where was it? Then all of a sudden it came at me. It was the noise a polar bear makes when happy and content, almost a purr, like a cat but slower. If they, polar bear, could purr. Other than the num, 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 I was alone. Making my way toward town, I hoped I created the pile of trees I could make out of the town of Valdez. But it looked strange. Just then I heard my grandpa calling my name. We found each other and made our ways toward town. When we reached the edge of his friend's place, we saw that every house, cabin, outhouse, shack, the trader's outpost, every building was gone. All that was left was the roofs. There was a roof where a building once stood. Later after I had told and retold, questioned Grandpa years, weeks later, Grandpa told me about them and why the fruit drops, which he added a couple more things. One was salt and honey, bananas. He knew them. For him, I think, was even able to get close because at times he took longer to make the drops. But he never said. He made the drops every month, same place at the same time, and never missed a drop till Alaska claimed him like so many of the bush pilots. Well, there you have a boy of 7 saved by a giant finger when the earth and Mother Nature shook everything to the ground in a demonstration of unequaled power. I left out a bit to shorten it up and save some time, but that's it. Take it or leave it. After 60 years, I could care less for the unbelievers. I know what happened because I was there, and I carry a 1.5-inch scar above my eye that reminds me every morning. Thanks, Steve. You're the man, dude. The door is always open for you, although I live in Oregon, just a few miles from the beach nowadays, but offer will stand for you, least ways till I leave for the next great adventure and leave this one finished. Yours sincerely, Valder Skegjor, pronounced Valder Skegwara. Well, I had that wrong, didn't I? P.S. You may use my name if needed. Sua Sponte. Valder, that is one hell of a share you shared with the people here through me today. Actually, you shared it back in June of 2021. It's in the folder that it's in. What a freaking description, what an experience, what a memory. If you want to share more, and for all of you out there, while you're emailing in your experience, your knowledge to share with all of the good, honest people out there through me on this channel, don't try to shorten shit up or make something sound a little different because I think it might take too long, all right, if it's about the experience. I would urge a lot of people to leave out a lot of details about your life leading up to your experience. I mean, I understand, sometimes I'll get stories, there might be 4 paragraphs or 5 paragraphs from people, 10 minutes of just talking about themselves and their past and their family, where they live, what they've done, funny little stories along the way, and then they get to their experience, which we are interested in hearing about, right? And then there might be only 2 paragraphs of that. But anyways, what I'm getting at is if you were trying to shorten up your experience to share with us, don't do it. Share it all. Share it all right? Because especially when I do get to it, who knows when I might get to a follow-up email later on, right? So put it all in there, man. Put it all in there. But for you, my friend, if you would like to share more about that experience, or if you have any more experiences or knowledge that you feel the people will benefit from, please email me back and share more. That was one hell of an experience. Holy shit. What can I say to that one? All right, it's titled Terror in My Soul. My name is David, and I've sent this email a couple of times, but it's like the lottery with the thousands of emails you receive. Today's your day, David. I've had a couple experiences that at the time I didn't know what it was and just passed it off, but since watching your videos it makes me wonder. The first time was 1986, riding my motorcycle home around 3 a.m. I decided to stop on a gravel road to take a break and walk around. I stopped, and before I had the chance to get off my bike, this overwhelming fear hit me. I sat there for a couple seconds wondering what it was, then it intensified, so I got out of there as fast as I could. It was 9 years later, I was going out hunting whitetail with my bow. My brother-in-law asked to go with, so I said fine, but I was going out early. He talked me into going out the night before and camping about a half mile from my tree stand. We both took our sleeping bags. He had an extreme cold weather bag, and since I was in the National Guard at the time, I took my military bag. It started to snow that night. I was so hot, I was taking clothes off, and he was putting clothes on. Around 3 a.m., I hear a hiss, and then I hear him say, "Look." I started to sit up when this scream came from right behind me. It was so loud that it shook my whole insides. Then something started to run away, knocking down trees. It sounded like a scream with a chainsaw mixed in. There's a few deer there, but after that scream, they all ran away. Later that day, we went to another hunting spot a few miles away and ended up running into a game warden. I told him what had happened and asked if he could take, and he asked if we could take him there. Once we got there, he looked around, then started to stammer and said it was a moose. I live in north central Iowa, and even though we have had an occasional moose here, it isn't very often. For years, I just passed both occurrences off as strange happenings or a moose, but after watching your videos, I'm wondering, just maybe there was something to it. David, I haven't a clue how many moose I've been around in my lifetime. Thousands. Literally thousands. I've hunted them, I've guided them, I've had them rock beside my tent in the middle of the night, I've had them run after me. Moose do not inflict a feeling of terror and fright into your soul, and they do not scream loud enough to make your body vibrate, and that's a fact. So, and like I said to numerous other people, just the fact that you sought out this channel online and then even took it a step further, found the email and emailed this in, you already know what it was, right? You already know. You know, one time, I'll share this with you guys, and you can Google it up. There's a lake called Namint Lake. It's on Vancouver Island. And it is about halfway up the Alberni Inlet if you're heading west, and it's on the right side of the inlet, southwest. So it's on the west side of the inlet. And when I was a little boy, I got flown in there in a float plane with my dad and his friend who owned a float plane. I might have told this a long time ago. And I love fishing, big time. Nobody else did at the time. So it was my dad, his friend's son, and me. And the Namint Lake had never ever been logged before. And I remember there was steep mountains on both sides, steep straight down, big mature forest, no roads, no nothing. And there was a cabin. They had a cabin on the, what would it be? It would be the south side of the lake. And they had like a couple logs tied together and a bit of plywood on top of them for a bit of a dock, and they had an aluminum boat in there they'd flown in. And the cabin had bunks on the back wall, so the bunks were in the back wall facing the lake, and there's bunks on the end of the cabin. You came in from this side, facing the lake. And I still remember vividly, I have a photograph of that cabin. Those old photographs you got at the drugstore after you dropped off the film, and it would come with one big one and two small ones connected in the same photo. Remember those paper ones? I still have a photo of that cabin somewhere. And I don't think I ever told anybody. I didn't tell anybody then, because it's probably too ashamed to admit that I was terrified, but they're all in the cabin, and all I wanted to do was fish, and the water was super crystal clear. And you go through the forest, maybe 5 yards, and then you hit a little bit of a gravel beach, and the gravel beach would be steep, and then go down stand on top of those two logs. And I cast with my spinning lure, but I didn't do it much, because I vividly remember feeling absolutely terrified. I remember feeling scared shitless. Broad daylight, just to walk from the cabin down to the beach and stand on the log. Whereas normally I go camping at Couch and Lake and other lakes around the Vancouver with my grandparents. With my grandparents, no problem at all. Never had a problem. I'd run down to the dock and stand there, and I would fish, trout fish by myself, stand on my spin casting or a bomber or a worm, whatever. No problem at all. But I remember being absolutely petrified the second I stepped out of that cabin. And I remember vividly looking around that timber and thinking, oh my God. And walking down to the gravel. And I remember I was just nervous and shitting myself the entire time, and I couldn't care less if I fished or not. I didn't really want to be there. I remember that. And then fast forward a few years later, I remember my dad and my mother and his friend of the float plane, Glenn King. He used to own an auto wrecking place on the Saanich Peninsula. BC Auto Wrecking. He used to own that years ago. And his wife, Val King. I believe she lives in Anaheim Lake still, west of Williams Lake. They bought a ranch up there in the middle of nowhere years later. And he died in a float plane crash there years later, spotting fires, forest fires at nighttime or something. Very unfortunate. But anyway, so the two couples went to the same lake, same cabin. And I'll never forget my mother retelling the story to us, because she's not an outdoorsy person. She's not into camping. She's not into nothing. Now, this is my dad at the time. They're divorced. They divorced when I was a young boy. Anyway, I'll never forget my mother describing the terror that her and Val King had when they stayed in the cabin, because my dad and the other guy, Glenn, they took the little aluminum boat that was floating in there and they took it way down lake, heading straight east to the opposite side, because they had found an old A-frame cabin just back in the forest back in there, a deserted cabin where a tree had fell on top of the roof, and they were going to cut that tree off and patch the roof and fix the cabin up, and that's what we're doing for that day. My mother and Mrs. King stayed back at the original cabin. And my mother said that just soon after they left the boat, she said, quote, something absolutely huge walked right behind the cabin, between the cabin and the wall of the mountain. So the back of the cabin facing the lake. So this thing walked on two legs between the cabin and the wall behind the cabin. Walked right by, going the same direction my dad and Mr. King went in the aluminum boat. And she said it sounded absolutely huge. And her and Mrs. King were terrified, petrified, and they never left the cabin. Obviously, they couldn't get a hold of my dad and Mr. King. And I'd imagine they told them about it when they got back, and they probably would have laughed at them and shrugged it off, right? But I never forgot my mother told that story. So now what my plan is, now that I'm not living too far from there actually, my plan is I have a Zodiac. I'm gonna put an inflatable Zodiac with a small outboard in my truck in case I need it. Because apparently it's been logged off now. And actually a friend of mine here, who I've known forever, he actually told me that he logged that valley out years back. I don't know how much has grown up. I don't know how much mature timber's left. I don't know what their logging road access is. Apparently you can drive in there now. So one of my to-do lists is I'm going to go on an adventure and I'm going to get out to that lake. I'm going to find my way out there. And if I have to, I'll put that Zodiac in the water and I'm going to go try and find that cabin. And I'm going to see if I get that same feeling when I stand there. I'll at least be able to find the remnants of the cabin, right? I'll be able to find something if it's gone. And I'm curious to see what I see and what I feel and what it's like. And I just want to see it. I think it'll be very interesting. And I will videotape everything. I'll take all of you with me. When am I going to do that? I don't know. I'm pretty stacked up from here until after hunting season's over. So I will imagine I would not be able to get out there until December, January, maybe this year. Maybe I can double it up with some steelhead fishing on the way. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But that's my plan. And that's one of my only experiences of feeling absolute terror without hearing anything or seeing anything and being in the forest. And that was when I was probably, I don't know how old I would have been. What do I would have, grade 4 or something. So anyway, listen to this. Philadelphia suburbs. First off, I'm not a good storyteller and I suck at typing, so I'm going to use the double index finger pecking technique as usual. My story happened at Fulcroft, PA, right outside southwest Philadelphia, PA, and you see a lot of freaky shit where I'm from, but nothing made me act in a way that I did that night because I was not by myself. I had my cousin with me, who was probably 7 years old, and the danger alarm went off full force. There's a small wooded area, right, and it connects to a water treatment plant that is connected to a nature reserve. If you look on Google Earth, you can see the woods connect and go all the way out Route 1. So I guess it's possible something could live there, and there are plenty of deer. Well, we park, walk into the woods, and I got the feeling kids were down there, probably under the age drinking, but just like we all did back in the day. Then I hear what sounded like a group of people talking, and I got down on one knee, 30 feet into the woods, on top of this hill that drops off 15 feet in front of my kind of left. So I'm palming my flashlight and telling my cousin to stop talking. What does that sound? Is it kids? I don't know, can't really make it out. So I reach down, pick up a pebble, this will get a reaction, and I'll find out if it's people or not, so we will leave. So I wind up and heave it in the direction of the voices, way down to the right of us. I hear it smack through layers of leaves and hit rocks. Then 10 feet in front of us, to my left, I hear this growl breathing. I can only explain, it sounded like a human with water in his lungs, huffing and puffing right there. It vibrated my chest. It was effing furious at me, whatever it was. I felt like I stuck my finger in an electrical outlet. Every hair on my back and my neck and my arms were standing on end. I calmly stood up, grabbed my cousin's hand, and said out loud, "Okay, we're leaving right now." We turned 180 degrees and walked briskly out of the woods. I never seen what this was, but that was a drop off right there where I heard the sound from 15 feet down, and it was on the edge, or I don't know, tall. Sounded like it was level with me 10 feet away. Thinking about it, I remember as a kid that same feeling at the zoo when lions would pop off and flex, roar. LOL. Okay, Steve, I hope it was a disappointment. This story still gives me goosebumps, and have I gone back down there since? F no. I watch you every day for 2 years. Now glad to shoot you this text. Thank you, Steve, and peace. Jack Philly. Jack from Philadelphia. Forgot about one thing. My cousin has no memory of this happening. Weird. Wow. That sounds like it must have been pretty intense, man. Pretty intense. You're lucky it didn't throw a frickin' boulder right back at you, and you're probably lucky both of you guys made it back out without getting picked up and screamed at, maybe, possibly, right? And like I always say, I'm pretty certain you know what it was. Your gut already knows what it was, just for the fact that you sought out this channel's email, and you typed it out and sent it in, which takes a lot of time. You already know what it was, right? But thanks for sending that in and sharing with all of us, man. I appreciate it. New York, Colorado. Steve, love the channel. Try to be as succinct as possible. September 2010. My friend, a cardiologist from Boston, and I are hiking the 130-mile Northville Placid Trail in the Adirondacks. It crosses only 3 roads, some of those for remote backcountry in the Northeast. On day 3, we were just north of Durant Lake State Campground on our way to Tyrell Pond, lean-to. Long day. It is dark. We are hiking by a headlamp. As the trail hooks northwest along the O'Neill Flow Creek, we hear a crazy, loud, gut-wrenching, horrifying screech, yell, bellow. Absolutely shit-your-pants terrifying. Dr. Dave and I could feel the sound, like a fire hose on us, and going through our bodies. We were rendered speechless and immobile for about 20 seconds. As we regained our composure, we were simultaneously saying, what the F was that? I carry a 9mm Kel-Tec PF9, more for peace of mind than serious protection. As we are regaining our senses, Dave says, shoot, shoot, shoot. I get his motivation, but I say, I can't shoot what I can't see. Next, 4 rocks the size of softballs and 2 volleys of 2 splashed in the creek just to our right about 10 feet from us. Holy shit, what the F is happening? We hot-foot down the trail, scared shitless, not processing anything. About 1.5 miles down the trail, we hear something crossing the stream just out of our headlamp vision. It sounds huge, and we can hear the footfalls and water dripping off whatever it is. 4 more rocks, 2 volleys of 2, crash the water, just like before. Come on, what the F? That was it. We made to the shelter totally rattled. Steve, my conclusion was that you have to have a hand to throw a rock. I know of no animals with opposing thumbs in the Northeast. Adirondack Sabe? I think so. My theory is that it, them, whatever, had young and were escorting me and Dave out of the area. We're probably only 30 miles from Whitehall, New York, the location of multiple documented encounters. Dave to this day refers to our encounter as our paranormal rape. Second encounter, San Juan Mountains, Colorado, July 2016. My buddy Steve and I doing the 40-mile loop from the Durango-Silverton Railroad. The first night we're the Elk Creek drainage. Great little campsite, 50 feet from the creek. I'm a light sleeper and hear every little nighttime noise. Wish I wasn't. Around 1 a.m. I hear voices across the creek and it sounds like 2 guys talking. I feel like I can almost make out the conversation, but I can't. My buddy's out cold. After a while, I fall back asleep. In the morning, I asked Steve, did you hear those guys jabbering last night? He said, what? No. Steve, I thought it just other backpackers at a campsite across the creek from us. We were up early because we had a big day in front of us. I crossed the creek to see who they were, to satisfy my curiosity. Absolutely no sign of anyone, and definitely no campsites in the vicinity. Okay, that's weird. I think I know what I was hearing. I was not fearful like I was with the first encounter, more like in wonderment. Steve, these beings are everywhere. The fear is more of a fear of the unknown, right? Love your channel. Condolences to Mr. Macaroni's passing. The unconditional love of an animal friend is precious. That bond will never go away. He still loves you. Take care and God bless. Steve Durgo, Springwater, New York. Steve, thanks for that Thanks for the kind words, man. Thanks for that generous share that you shared with everybody through me. You know what it was. You know what it was. So do the other tens of thousands of people who have had the exact same experience you just shared with us. Everybody knows what it was. We just don't know. We just don't know these solid, intimate details of exactly what these people are, how long they're here. Are they here full time? I don't know. Are they more intelligent than us? Probably in most ways they are. Do they possess skills that we don't? Without a doubt. Did we have those skills previous? Probably. I believe we did for sure. And I do strongly believe that the people who are in control of our education system purposely deny us of this knowledge, because I have a feeling that if we did obtain the knowledge that these other beings have, then we would absolutely not have to be controlled in any way, shape, or form to survive on this planet. That's what I firmly believe. Some may argue, some may not, some may agree, I don't know, but the pieces that I'm collecting for my puzzle are pointing in that direction. Pretty solid. But anyway, I think that should be enough right now. I gotta catch those horses and get them back from the other pasture. And I will be sharing a lot more with you all shortly. Be safe out there. Email it in. It's gonna get got to, and it's gonna get rad. Get got to.